Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. Guys, so Max Blumenthal is a badass reporter. I follow his stuff on Twitter, and every so often when he's on Real News Network or, whatever he's writing, I tend to try to follow it because he tends to be pretty damn good. Giving details that other people may miss. He has a perspective similar to my own. He's sitting on the edge of the world or edge of the moon. You're looking at the world. What do you see? Now, I don't necessarily know if I always agree with it, but I do know that oftentimes his perspective is precise, on point, detailed, and I like the guy. Well, I like his work anyway. I don't know him as a person. Now, that being said, I don't know if he's in Nicaragua, but he is apparently talking to people in Nicaragua, and he's doing a report on Nicaragua, and he's reporting somewhat of a soft coup being thwarted. Now, his story is interesting because his story is talking about the other side of what's being put out in the media. I have to be honest. I am not all that versed on what's taking place in Nicaragua. I'm only going to go report on his part first. And once I get a little bit more versed on it, I'm going to do a fuller story on it. But I do want to show what he's talking about because I find this extremely interesting. So, in a nutshell, though, let me give. Where is it? I was reading a bit on what was taking place in Nicaragua in regards to the government and everything else. Sandinistas, Reagan, war, government. Now, what I've heard from the West, or at least from the West, it comes across as if there's a dictator that's just mowing down the people that are in Nicaragua. That's always a pretext that this stuff goes along with. Now, Max Blumenthal has done this. There's a Twitter thread, and I'm putting the Twitter thread in. If someone has more information about Nicaragua, definitely write it down below because I'm going to be checking it as I research a little bit more into what is taking place currently in Nicaragua. I have to be honest, I am also extremely skeptical of what takes place from the standpoint of reporting in the Western media. I see how the Western media reports on what takes place in Israel versus the reality of Israel, what makes me think, or which makes me more critical about what media comes up with in other contexts. Why would it be just wrong in this one very specific context as opposed to having a perspective that is trying to be propagated through various facets? So if we're looking through the lens of South America, should I look at it through the lens of Western media if I know that Western media skews it when it's talking about other things related to foreign policy? That's kind of what I'm getting at. So, for example, if I'm looking at Israel or if I'm looking at Syria, are white helmets these protectors, or are white helmets edifices or aspects of Western governments trying to change regime using this kind of fig leaf of somehow helping the society with these white helmet protectors and superheroes? Is what the United States doing in Syria, is it hands off, or did it really have assets in those countries giving weapons to terrorists in order to propagate the war? I'm trying to show there's a difference between the narrative versus the reality of what takes place. What's another one? Kind of besides the point. I think I made my point. It's how media reports this stuff is not necessarily indicative of how things are. Chemical strike. Hey, there's a chemical attack. Has there really been a chemical attack? Well, the OPCW said there wasn't. It said there wasn't. It went to the site. It actually went to the site. It didn't stop the United States from attacking the country, saying there was a chemical attack, even though it couldn't nail down the fact that there was one. Mattis himself in testimony said they were still looking for attacks that never took place. I'm just saying. I'm skeptical of what media puts because media has not necessarily given the reality of events. It's given the American story of events. Those things are different. Max Blumenthal is covering Nicaragua. This is not to say that what is taking place in Nicaragua is somehow peaches and lovely. I've already given the heads up that I'm not necessarily all that well versed in what's taking place in Nicaragua. But that being said, I will show what Max Blumenthal is saying about this in advance of getting a more thorough story. I've sent him, sorry, I'm getting stopped up. I've sent him a direct message on Twitter to see if he'll be willing to come on for 10 to 15 minutes to talk about this very specific case of what's taking place in Nicaragua. He seems to be on the ground, and I like when people are on the ground as opposed to when people are just kind of pontificating from their CNN seat. So this is a Twitter thread. I'll put this Twitter thread below for you to see for yourself. Thread by Max Blumenthal. Today is the 39th anniversary of the Sandinistas' revolution. Managua is out to celebrate the apparent defeat of a soft coup that paralyzed Nicaragua. I'm here to document a side of the story omitted by the Western media. A thread follows on some of what I've learned, a video and print later. All right, let's keep going. Yesterday, I visited Radio Ya, private leftist radio station that is top rated in Managua and supplies social services to local residents, regardless of their politics. It was burned to the ground by the opposition. 22 staffers escaped with their lives. All right, how do I get out of this? This is the location that's been burned. One of the things I love when I'm traveling is to see their pictures of iconic life. Like, everywhere you go, they have this idea of an iconic, ideal version of wherever they are. And they would blow it up to epic proportions. We were running in the sun under whatever the banner to which you find yourself. I'm always enamored by that because it's always relatively the same, even though it's different. Staff of the Nueva Ya worked out of a small makeshift office. Now those working the night shift must sleep in to avoid right-wing violence. We're hunted by hitmen, station director Nicholas Swartz told me. Its sports reporters were recently accosted by gunmen on motorcycles. Sleeping in their offices to avoid right-wing violence. Schwartz told me he informed the Inter-American Commission of Human Rights about the torching of his station by opposition militants, and they ignored him. He said, me and my colleagues, Daniel Klovelik, Thomas Hedges, TRN, are the first Western reporters to interview him. Nicaragua's armed opposition burned down its cooperative bank, which serves Managua's poor and working class, and is named for Hugo Chavez. The records and accounts of 100,000 or more people are in jeopardy. A targeted campaign of violence has been waged against the public sector. Essentially, they're attacking things that are edifices of, you can call it left-wing cooperation or human cooperation. Look at that. Max said he's going to come through and he's going to do a fuller story about this, or he may be writing a full story about this. But I hope he'll come on. I've been looking at I didn't have full time to actually dive into all of the stuff that's been up about Nicaragua. I have started looking at a little bit of the history, and I know a little bit, but not enough to ever do a story on. So I'm not even going to try at this moment until I actually buff up on my info. But nevertheless, hopefully Max will come on to the show, so he's more than welcome. Joshua Renshaw, did you catch Cal's live stream yesterday? He was talking about being a fan of yours. You should invite him to invite yourself onto the show. No fucking way, Cal. No way. No way. I didn't realize Cal watched the show. I love Cal. Secular Talk is an amazing fucking show. Secular Talk is an amazing show. Jamal, I suffer from oh God. Baltazar, I don't know what this says. I suffer from dyschronometria. These words, man, you're killing me, dog. Dyschronometria Thomas. Jamal, I suffer from dyschronometria Thomas. I think if you're talking about my insomnia, I don't suffer from actually, let me look this word up before I fuck around and say something insane. Yeah, man, Cal, I'm a big fan of secular talk. Cal is awesome. A condition of cerebral dysfunction in which the individual cannot accurately estimate the amount of time. Oh, I love this. You know, it's funny. My wife would absolutely agree with this. All right, I got to show this definition. This is awesome. Is a condition of cerebral dysfunction in which the individual cannot accurately estimate the amount of time that has passed, distorted time perception. It is associated with the cerebral ataxia when the cerebellum has been damaged and does not function to the fullest extent of its ability. Dude, that's hilarious. That's hilarious. I didn't know that was a thing. Big fan of Cal's. I never invited him on the show because I didn't think he would say yes. That's the first point. I didn't even think he knew who I was. That's the second point. But it wasn't for a lack of me not knowing him. I've watched secular talk for a while. Joshua Renshaw. I needed Jamal wasn't going to keep this one long. 3 hours later, all I got was this lousy t-shirt. Well, my problem is I have a time limit right now. Like I have to, at 10 o'clock, I'm going to have to get ready to head on out. In which case, I got to get these shows out early. So I can't, it's like I have a thing in my head now that says, go, 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 go. That type of thing. Also, I don't know a huge amount about Nicaragua. So there's only so far into this I can go before I feel like an asshole when I get something wrong. At this point, I can rest on Max Blumenthal says X is going on. Hopefully I can get Max Blumenthal on the show to continue to say X and Y as I beef up on my own information on Nicaragua and what's taking place. Not to mention, I think it was yesterday or the day before, it was like 6-8 hours. Like it was like some insane amount of time that I was on. I was on like 3 hours for one episode and 2.5 hours for another, then another. That was taxing, man. It was brutal. People sometimes change the meaning of revolution to mean something other than what is historically meant. Revolution is when one class overthrows another class through war. Eat the rich. Eat the rich. Maybe, yes. I mean, definitions, words are just... Look, the meaning of words are flexible in and of themselves. So I feel you. And I think he said a soft coup. I don't think he used the term revolution. And a coup is just a power change. But goddamn it, I want him to explain it. Because he would be the guy to be able to go into it. Too funny, Baltazar. Tabitha Enriquez, too funny indeed. And I can hear my wife screaming, "That's it! That's it!" The funny part is, I'm not just bad with that here. I'm bad with that in general. This should take 5 minutes. 20 minutes later. I bet Chris Christie tastes good with a rub or some barbecue sauce. Oh God, that's disgusting. Ryan Perpez, war is when your government tells you who is the enemy. Revolution is when you figure it out for yourself. Fucking A, I love that. I love that. I love it. I love that. So I'll be 12 minutes late with my comments. That's funny. All right, I'm going to end this one because I don't want this one to go too long. And at this point, we're just sitting here fucking around. The key point to take away from this is, look, be skeptical of your media. Your government has lied to you before. Your government will lie to you again. And be aware and cognizant that the perspective that you're getting is a perspective, not the reality. Those things are different. You always need to be aware that what you're being told is what somebody is telling you, not something that you yourself are directly experiencing. The direct experience is something that's relatively rare. At least from the standpoint of media, there's always a distinction between those things. When Jake Tapper, listen for the moment to Seymour Hersh. Seymour Hersh talks about when he's starting a media. He has a new book out called Reporter. And Hersh talks about the self-censoring that takes place when you're in media. This thing of, they're not interested in the story, so I'm not going to repeat this story. This thing that's pervasive in the way that we go about our affairs from the standpoint of what we consume as the narrative or the story. When we're looking outside of the world from the standpoint of Western media, we're getting an American perspective of things, not the perspective. There is a difference in those things. That's the part I'm trying to nail home. I nail that point home not because I'm necessarily a cheerleader for anybody else around the world. It's somewhat the opposite. And I know this sounds kind of weird. I want to be left to my devices. I don't want my military to be used to smash the throats of other people. I think there's a feedback on that. I think there's blowback. I think there are people who want to kill us because of the things that we do around the world. Well, I want to stop doing those things because I don't want those people trying and wanting to kill us. I think my safety is ensured when other people's safety is ensured. I think that's somewhat true. There are various reasons. My main point in this particular story is, regardless of what the Western media is saying about Nicaragua, have doubts. Doubts are good things. Doubts are amazing things. And be very cognizant and aware that the story that you're getting is just the story that you're getting. Reality is something else. So, I hopefully, Max Blumenthal takes me up on that. And I would love for him to come onto the show. I sent him the tweet out. He may probably ignore me. But I hope he doesn't. So, we'll see. Denny Knapp. There's a great video on C-SPAN called CIA Alleged Cocaine Cell starring Adolf Calero, Eden Pastoro, and Maxine Waters. Calero and Pastoro were Contra leaders. Funny vid. That's interesting. That's interesting. You know, it's funny. When Reagan was putting all that money into South America, getting the money from the Iran-Contra affair, what did Western media say? Think about it for the moment. I'm asking you to think about this stuff because I want you to look at history through the lens of what you know now. And think about what they were saying then based upon what you know now. And use that lens to look at where you are now and ask yourself, what are we not being told about what is taking place around the world with regards to what we're doing around the world? I'm asking you for comparison. Like, if you talk to media back then, they would say, we're reporting the story. All right. But were they reporting the story? No. No, they weren't. At least not in any real way. The Iran-Contra affair did break at some point. Reagan and all this other stuff did come out, but Reagan never was prosecuted for that. President of the United States, the CIA is essentially getting money, selling weapons, getting money, and then funneling that stuff to South in order to wage a war, a covert war. Why do you believe that those are not things that we're doing to this day? All I'm saying is be skeptical of what you're being told and look at the historical context in the way that media was reporting stories as opposed to what you know about those things now. And question, now, you are living history in this case. Acknowledge it as such. So, I'll leave it here. Counter-revolutionaries, Iran-Contras. I suspect the rich will give you diarrhea if you eat the rich. Jamal should do a video about the failure of democracy. The failure of democracy. Is it a failure? I mean, assuming a failure, you have to assume that's something you ever had. You always had. You must understand that the rich were always skeptical of democracy. Like, democracy wasn't really the point. At least if you're talking about America. You have other countries like France, you know, liberty, libertad, family, what is it, freedom, fraternity, and something else. Well, if you notice, that was taken over by Napoleon at one point. And Napoleon had made... The French Revolution is fucking phenomenal if you're talking about this idea of freedom. It's America's revolution in some degree is based on the French Revolution, kind of, at least what they say, the glorious terms in which they describe it. In all honesty, they just wanted to take the rest of the land going further south. But the French Revolution was fucking fascinating because of the context of the other people who were nearby. So think of what was taking place. You had all of these kingdoms, and you have this government that becomes a republic. And the other kingdoms are like, that place is a cancer. That place is a cancer. They looked at what was taking place in France as an utter cancer in Europe. France, on the other hand, took the disposition of, we want to free all of these other kingdoms. It's fascinating. It's fucking fascinating. Do you believe that all rich people as individuals are evil? No. I believe they're mentally deranged or distorted. In the same way I believe poverty on some people have distorted their personalities and their perspectives. That's what I think. I think there's a distortion of their consciousness. What I mean by that is, look, if you were born into, fuck man, we're in fuckery. But, you know, it's funny. My wife, one of her ideas for the show was essentially to have a user-generated show where you kind of just go and slice the video up and just put it up in those. No, I don't think the rich are evil. I think they're behaving as the way people with large amounts of revenue or with large amounts of resources behave. I think it is perfectly natural for somebody with a large amount of resources to behave that way. The left sometimes looks for things like morality and good conscience. This stuff doesn't apply. It just doesn't apply. Those are human conceptions that are overlaid on the world. The reality of it is, I understand why the 1% behaves the way they behave. I don't understand why the 99% behaves that way. Meaning, if some guy stands up in a room and says, hey, I deserve 99% of the resources. Hell, fuck it. Let's cut it down. Let's say one guy stands up and says, I deserve 90% of the resources. And comes up with some reason for you to give him 90% of the resources. I fault the 99% that allowed him to get the resources, not the 1% who was maniac enough to stand up and say he wants it. I don't think rich are evil. I think they do really evil things, but I think they do horrible, preposterous, atrocious things because society allows them to do those horrible, atrocious things. Ultimately, you gave somebody a ton of cash, and that person was born into a society that told them it was perfectly okay for them to have their cash. And not just told it was okay, it was told it was okay for them to make more of their cash. Then on top of it, they were job creators. They were job creators. That they serve some good function in the society. All of these things, the society creates the narratives associated with making that stuff okay. So if you were back in the 50s and whites had this first-class citizen status in comparison to African Americans or blacks, so there was a distinction between African Americans and whites in the exact same society, the society itself crafted the ideas and the reasons and everything else to justify the position that they were in comparison to the other people who were in the society. They were in charge of society, so they crafted society and made up their own dogma and everything else to justify it. The rich are the same way. The issue is not so much the rich in and of themselves. The issue is the power differential in these things and the things that are crafted around this power differential to make people realize or believe that the power differential is okay. That needs to be unraveled. Do you believe in kings and queens? Do you believe in kings and queens? Why do you believe that royalty is bestowed by God? No, I don't. And yet, we have these people with all of this cash, all of this money, all of these resources. My thought here, even though I get the psychology of the people or the indoctrination of the population that I get the indoctrination of the population. You're born into a society, and as you're born into society, you don't necessarily question the society. You take on the things and events in the society. You take those things on and into yourself. You internalize them. So you'd have people say, I need to fight for my country. What does that mean? What does that mean? Who are you fighting for? What are you fighting for? Ultimately, a government sends you off to die for something that you don't even necessarily get a full stake out of. Especially the plight of African Americans in the war. Think about Indians in the First World War. They were colonized, and they were out there fighting for the British Empire. Now, at the end of that war, because they were fighting in that war, there was a certain understanding that the status would need to be improved to some degree. That war weakened and broke Britain. Even though Britain was riding high after World War I, they were broken as an empire after that war. We're all over the place. No, I don't think the rich are evil. I just think they're indoctrinated with a point of view that they propagate because the point of view is self-glorifying. That's what I think. The 99% are also distorted in their point of view to even allow them to get their money and resources. There should never be a Jeff Bezos. That's my point. We have a poll, Rev, the DNC, I spun our globe, T, Tom Perez. What? We have a policy, Rev, at DNC, I spun our globe, hashtag, I'm sorry. We have a poll, Rev, at DNC, I spun our globe, dash T Perez, Tom Perez. To be fair, for a more profitable third quarter, doesn't make the best battle cry. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. It does not. Moni G, the shot heard around the world, the start of the revolution. A Minuteman were ready on the move. Take your barrel, take your gun, report to the General Washington. How epic does that sound? How epic does that sound? Fuck it. Goddamn. I hate the fact. I hate this aspect about myself. I get, I am a sucker for war. Like, I am a sucker for a battle cry. Like, I am a sucker for the battle speech. When people are, even now, as I say this, as I talk about this, the thing in my head is going off. I can feel it. I can feel the chemical release. Like, you get into the state where these guys are, like, rallying the troops. And even when it's a war I don't like, I'm like, yes, let's kick some ass. Let's kick some ass. And you're like, oh, yeah, but whose ass are we kicking? Yeah, it sucks. What is evil but a judgment of a person's actions? I understand why mass shooter shoots people. It doesn't change the fact that they take out the frustrations on random people walking around. Yeah, every Oasis. I love that. I love that you said that. It's it's like the disparity between understanding why somebody does something versus justifying the thing that they're doing. Sometimes the explanation of it in the public looks at the explanation as a justification. Those are different things. A mass shooter goes in and shoots somebody. Okay, why did he do it? The society says, we don't give a shit why he did it. He did it. He needs to be prosecuted. The more reasonable thing is, why did he do it? Because if you don't challenge the thing of why he did it, you're going to get more mass shooters. Having all of these mass shooters is a symptom of a sick society. There's something wrong with your society. It's like a body that's infected with something where the person has aches or pains or pus or something, wound in which something is gaping out of that's disgusting and green. The way we go about it is wiping the green pus away. And the pus happens again, and we act like the green pus that's oozing from that particular hole is just a green pus, as if it's a one-time thing, even though it keeps happening over and over and over again. Yes, Ivory Coast, I agree with you. There's a disparity between naming something versus... There's a difference in explaining why somebody does something. And explaining why somebody does something is not the same thing as justifying what the person is doing. I hope that makes sense. Seeking to stop people from turning into the ultimate manifestations of morality doesn't change that the person in front of you is right now. Yes. Yes. Yes, perfect. Not even add anything to perfect. The goal is to stop them from changing into that manifestation of evil. Meaning, it's not so much that I say that the rich person is evil per se. I said that they're mentally deranged. I said they're mentally deranged because I want to stop them from being mentally deranged and fucking people over. I understand why they do it. It's the rest of the people that allow them to do it that is somewhat problematic. And fact is, people have fell into this weird line of thought that it's okay for Jeff Bezos to have $150 billion while somebody else, a lot of somebody else's, find their home on his streets. It's amazing. Balthazar, revolutionary army was made of drunk slaves and poor people paid off by the rich. All got tricked into war. Political revolution equals, oh, I see. Look into the HR 3057. HR 3057. Will do. I do remember they were paying off, you know, it's funny, in the movie Gangs of New York. And do you remember towards the end of that movie, the government is trying to give people money to join into the army? Or, oh, you can pay your way out of it. So you could say, like, so the rich could say, yeah, fuck that, I'm not fighting in that war. Here's $300. If you didn't have $300, you couldn't say no. Couldn't say no. Yeah. All right. This 10-minute video, that was going to be a 10-minute video, that is now a 30-minute video, I'm going to end it here. Thank you all for showing up. If I can stick one more in between now and 10 o'clock, I'm going to try to do it. I just need to find a decent story to do so that I can inhale in me and compare it to whatever I have that's already in me to form some kind of narrative in the next 41 minutes. 40 minutes. 39 minutes and 40 seconds. All right, guys. Have a good one. Oh, if you enjoy the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe. You can always support through Patreon. Balthazar, Joshua Renshaw, thank you guys. It's always appreciated. You always help the show, and I always appreciate it. Thanks, guys. Have a good one.